Hello, would you like to create a realistic looking severed hand prop all for cheap at home? Come on, let's have a look how we do it. Okay, so here are all the things you're going to need. The first is the most expensive, which is the liquid latex. This cost me about 15 quid for a litre or $20, but I'm by no means going to use all of it in this project anyway, so it's good for a few. The next thing is petroleum jelly, which you might also know as Vaseline. After that, we've got some baby powder. And then we have some brushes. One that you don't mind destroying with latex, and the other one that you're going to use to brush on baby powder. You're going to want a hairdryer, so have one handy. And finally, you're going to want some cotton wool. Beyond this, the only things we're going to need are paints for finishing off the project. Now the first thing we're going to do is rub our hands with the Vaseline or petroleum jelly. Now you want to get it in all the nooks and crannies. You want to really rub it in, and if you're hairy like me, make sure it's really firmly into all of those hairs, because we're going to put latex on this hand and we don't want it to stick, especially not to the hairs, because it will rip them out. I should have actually probably said the first thing to do is prepare all of your materials and your tools, because you don't want to be doing that with one greasy hand afterwards. It's a little bit more complicated, isn't it? So rub it all in, and then once that's done, we're going to move on and start to apply the latex. This first layer, you need to be especially careful to get into all of those little bits. What we're going to do is we're going to build the latex up layer by layer, and this is the first layer, and at the end we're going to have a latex glove, which then we're going to turn inside out, and all of the details will be on this first layer. So you really need to get into all of your wrinkles, all of the creases, everything like that, especially with this first layer. Okay. And once you're satisfied that your hand is completely saturated, completely covered, then we're going to move on and we're going to start to blow dry it. We want the latex to be completely dry before we do the next step. Things to consider here, you need to blow dry it on a lower setting. You don't want it too high. You don't want the latex to start bubbling up, and you don't want to burn your hand inside, obviously. Also be aware that you don't want your fingers to touch and they'll start to stick together. Latex is very sticky, especially with itself, so keep your fingers apart, don't let them stick together. You also want to start to put your hand in the position that you want the end glove to be. I want my fingers slightly curled here, so that's what I'm doing as I'm drying it. When you're dry as a bone, but about 1,000 times stickier, we're going to move on to phase 3, which is powdering the hand. What we're trying to do here is seal in the layer, and all you're looking to do is get rid of any shiny spot you can see. Remember again that your hand is a complex 3D object. Keep turning it around, trying to look between all the gaps and not miss anywhere. Once you're done, once that is all dry, that's the whole process basically, and we're just going to repeat that a bunch of times. Obviously I'm not going to show you every single layer I did, because that would be a bit boring and repetitive. So let's move on to talking about a technique that's really going to help you sell the realism of this hand once you're done. A lot of people will inform you that it takes years of practice with an airbrush to get realistic looking skin, but if you are either not very good at painting, or you don't have an airbrush, or really both like me, this technique will really help you just to avoid that complication of needing that expertise. I'm not saying I invented this technique, I'm sure other people must have come up with it before, but I haven't seen it anywhere else, so I'm happy to be sharing it today and hopefully making some people's lives easier. If you look at the back of your hand, you will see that you have veins that look kind of translucent because they are under several layers of skin. Now, what are we doing here? We're working with layers of latex. So, after about 3 or 4 layers, after I'd powdered everything down, I cracked out the blue paint and I painted on some veins, copying the back of my right hand. And it's worth mentioning now that the end result will be a right hand, although you can see I'm painting on the left because I'm going to turn it inside out. If you're filming a scene and someone gets their left hand chopped off, then you need to do everything on your right hand for this technique to then turn it inside out and be left with the left hand at the end. My camera died just before I painted on the blue veins, so I can't show you that, but it doesn't really matter. You can imagine me painting on some blue lines, and I'm going to show you a second part to this technique which I did capture, so you can see me doing that as well. Now we're on layer number 8. Let's go back and look at our hands again. You will almost invariably see some red mottling. That's subsurface. Indeed, if we skinned your hand, then you would be bright red. So next part of this technique to make the hand look realistic is after this layer is finished, I'm just going to paint the hand bright red. And you can see what that looks like here. And you'll want to blow dry the paint job as well, although there's no need to powder it. After that, I did 2 more layers, which makes a total of 10 latex layers and 1 paint layer, which is thick enough. I wanted to show you this layer because if you want to do something like a Freddy Krueger burns victim, acid victim, or something like that, you could just not turn the glove around, and this would be a very good starting point. The next step is to take the glove off. This requires you to powder, especially around the edges, and then we're going to start to very gently lift it up, being careful not to rip anything. And as soon as we've got a little bit up, we want to start to powder underneath as well. And we're going to take this step by step. I'm a little bit worried about my hairs here because obviously the latex gets very dry. I know there's going to be a little bit of ripping of hairs involved. In the end, it wasn't too bad, but it might look a little bit sore to you when you see the end result just in one corner. And there's the glove, pre-veined and mottled. On to the stuffing. I have to say, at this point I was a little bit tired and hungry, but I wanted this to be a one-day build, so I powered through, and the result was that I didn't stuff this very well. So let that be a lesson to you all. Take a break when you need a break. I stuffed this quickly and badly, and then went on to the next step and sealed that in, so I couldn't really do much about it at that point. Suffice to say, you should make sure your fingers are stuffed properly, try and get some knuckles in, and a fleshy thumb around the palm and all of that kind of thing. Now I'm going to create the torn wrist by dipping cotton in latex and pulling it into the shapes that I want and positioning it where I think looks good. And then of course blow drying. On to painting. Because we've used this reversing method, we've actually ended up with a negative cast. What that means is the bits that should be cracks are actually raised, and the bits that should be higher are actually lower. A very standard method of painting is that you're going to paint your darker colour in a wash, just water it down and it will run off the peaks and go into the cracks, and then you're going to dry brush your lighter colour so it's only touching the peaks. So my idea was maybe to switch that around and wash with the lighter colour first and then dry brush with the darker colour. and that way give us the required effect. However, when I started washing with the lighter colour, for some reason it was sticking to the peaks, so that wasn't working out. I'd also pulled these paints off the shelf that said vinyl acrylic for kids, and maybe the for kids part is that they don't stick very well, so I didn't like how this was all turning out. So in the end, I washed all of this off and I started again. So now I am giving it a wash with a darker colour, which isn't too dark, it's just raw umber. It's gonna give me that nice jaundiced dead hand look that's all the rage with dead hands nowadays. Then I'm just regular brushing it with my lighter colour, which is more towards my own flesh tone. You can see I'm not going in too heavy here. I'm letting the latex layer show through and both those layers that we painted below show through. And here's a rare look at the underside. I only did a basic paint job on this side for now because I don't intend to display it this way round. And now the severed flesh with the obligatory red base coats. A brown wash to add depth. Afterwards, dry brushing a brighter red for highlights. The final thing I'm doing here is applying a bit of liquid silicone. This has two purposes. The first is that when it dries it will make a shiny wet look, but where it pools it will also make a kind of opaque grey area, and in those areas I'm just going to tickle it with a bit of yellow to create a bit of fatty tissue. I had to leave the silicone to dry for a while, and when I came back it just took a minute to put the yellow on, so I didn't bother capturing that on camera. And we're done. So let's have a look at the finished result. While it's not perfect, I'm pleased with the results of something done in one evening. I may go back and tinker with it with the paint job, even maybe cut into it and see if I can stuff it a little bit better. But as it is, I think it's pretty nice, it looks pretty good, and I'm happy with the results. If you followed along with the tutorial, I'd love to know how it went. Send me your videos, photos. I'd like to see what you've done with it. And if you want to support me, I'm sure you know how. We're done. Very, very bye.